Have you ever played a game and immediately had the thought of, wow, this is an instant classic. This is already one of the best games in this genre. Tag Team isn't there yet, but it is surprisingly close. And I don't want to start this video by just gassing up Tag Team and making you think that it is some perfect monolith. It's not. It is a great game, but it has its flaws. And I think there are a couple reasons why this game is not going to be for everybody. But for me, it's not my favorite two-player game of all time yet, but I think that there's a chance it gets there.
To start the game, you draft two superheroes, each with their own asymmetric deck and sometimes tokens. You'll take the starting card for each of your two fighters and then shuffle the two decks of each fighter together. Arrange the starting cards into your action deck. Once you and your opponent have both done this, you'll each set your action deck out, flip the first card and resolve it, and then flip the second card, resolve that one, and that's a round. Now you'll draw 3 cards from your fighter's shared deck, choose one to add to your action deck, and slot it somewhere in there. Your action deck is never shuffled, so where you place it will have rippling consequences from this point onward.
Once you've done that, you start the next round. You and your opponent will keep doing this, flipping cards, resolving them, and then adding a new card somewhere in your deck until you or your opponent knock out a fighter. Once you've done that, whoever has had their fighter knocked out loses, and that's the game. And I think this is where Tag Team is going to lose some gamers. The only choice you make every round is which card to keep and where in your deck to add it. The cards themselves are fully automatic. You don't make any choices when they go into play. And I think for some gamers, that is going to feel too restrictive. I don't want to say this game lacks player agency, but it is hyper-focused on this one somewhat small decision that you make every round. For some people, this game is going to be so hands-off that it hurts to play because the only choices you're making are these really small ones at the start of the round, and then you wait 2 minutes to see the consequences of your choice play out before you get to do anything else. And I really enjoyed this. I thought that these small decisions have such rippling consequences every round. And if you absolutely nail a prediction and just lock down what your opponent is going to do, it feels really great. But again, I think some people just are not going to find this aspect of the game enjoyable. I did, and I think part of that comes from nailing these predictions of what your opponent is going to do. And these predictions are based off of which characters you and your opponent are playing, which are another highlight for me.
All of the heroes that you play as feel so fresh and unique. The asymmetry does not feel like it's pasted on. In fact, it is the lifeblood of this game. Every time you play, you're going to be making choices based on what you know about your characters and your opponent's characters. What are they capable of doing in a single round? What do you need to watch out for? The cards you play with may be just an attack, but they can really be anything, from protecting your ally to attacking both opponents instead of just the active one, or even an insta-kill if certain conditions have been met. Each hero's deck is unique to them and have their own gimmicks, lending the heroes very clear strengths and weaknesses. This can also be a drawback for some people. This game is balanced on the fact that these characters aren't great at everything. I had a game where my opponent had 2 heroes who were both really great at support and defense, but when the rounds kept going and he didn't have an attack card to attack me, that support and defense didn't mean much, and I essentially wiped the floor with him. There is a draft that you do to determine characters each game, so this can be mitigated once you know what they're all about, but it is going to be a speed bump for people who are just learning how to play. The art is also fantastic. Every card subtly or not so subtly shows what your superhero is doing in this battle in a way that I really enjoyed. The sense of power each character possesses oozes with every new piece of art you see of them. The theme and the mechanics of the asymmetry flow beautifully together.
If you're excited to learn about these different characters and their strengths and weaknesses and the different nuances you need to know to make each of these engines click, the asymmetry feels great, and it brings a bright freshness to every game as you play with a different cast of characters. If you're looking for a game that you can just pick up and play with just about anybody without having to teach multiple, sometimes complex characters, this probably ain't gonna be it. I don't think that this game has a high barrier to entry to learn how to play, but I probably would stray away from teaching this game to some of my less board game savvy friends in favor of something a bit lighter.
And while this game does have a natural ramp up in action as your decks grow bigger and you do more actions each round, Tag Team sometimes has a problem with when the game ends. There's usually a point each game where one player clearly has the other on the ropes, and while there's a chance for a comeback if you block enough attacks, it's usually not enough to make the extra round or two needed to finish off the fighter more rewarding. Some of the heroes do have ways of mitigating this by having high burst damage, which can sneak out a win from the jaws of defeat. But more often than not, this game would have been better off ending one round earlier. On the flip side, there are also times where the game ends way too soon. In the game I mentioned earlier where my opponent didn't have a way of attacking me, the game ended after 4 or 5 rounds without a satisfying ramp in power. This has to do with the asymmetry and how characters match up, but it does mean that some plays of this game are just not going to be as fun as others.
So where does Tag Team stand? For me, I love it. I think that there is nothing that quite does what this game does. And if you can look past the hyper-focused player decisions and hands-off gameplay, there is nothing that nails the niche that Tag Team does. And there are more superheroes on the way in an unannounced but heavily implied expansion. And I think with those superheroes and the variety that they'll bring, there's a chance Tag Team becomes my favorite 2-player game of all time. At the moment, this is my favorite game of the year so far. I do highly recommend checking it out if you can before buying it, just to make sure that the things that I mentioned won't hinder your enjoyment of the game, because I do think that this game is not going to be for everybody. With that though, Tag, I'm out. Thank you so much for tuning in. I like this game a lot, obviously, as I put in the review, but I want to hear your thoughts down below. Do you think this take on superheroes is a kind of fun one? What are your thoughts on auto-battlers and the way that they're slowly creeping into the board game space? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I have been Eric with the Cardboard Herald.